and welcome to the Service Operations Podcast. I am your host, 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗶𝗹𝗶. Our guests are from different industries and functions. They will share their experience, strategies, and the changing landscape to help you take the service operations of your business to the next level. Hi, Gabby. Good morning. Nice to have you on this chat, and it's really my pleasure. I'm so happy that we're connecting after a long time. So let's get started straight away.
Perfect.
So Gabby, just tell us something about your journey, because see, when we last interacted and we worked, did some work together, it was about a workshop which was very basic in that sense, and there was a method you used, so it was not like training. You weren't talking to people and telling them, oh, you should do this and that, but you taught them a method. So tell us about your journey starting from that method to what you're doing now.
Okay, thank you. So, well, let me start with my passion of teaching people so that they can then teach others through the ripple effect. So I really love the concept of the ripple effect, and I love that I can learn something that I can then share that with others. And one of the things that from an early stage was that I had the privilege and the opportunity actually to work and to start my career in contact centres. From there, my desire not just to work in the contact centre, but to teach people about what are some of the ways that we can have a bigger impact and a more positive impact on others. So when we're talking about a service orientation, we're talking about the end user. The customer is the one that we can have an impact on. But if we can impact very positively the people that are in between, the people that are serving those customers, and they feel good and they feel confident and they feel valued, then that is where the magic starts. And pardon me. In my early career, I really I went from working in contact centres and managing contact centres, and then when I met you, we had this opportunity to then work with your team members to build and grow their skills. And those skills are about having a step-by-step process. And I think that the success of any organization is to have some sort of systems, processes, and compliance, and not to be upset by that, but to revel in that, because that gives people the platform for greatness. It is from that platform that they can then move on. So when we do teaching and training, we do have a methodology and we do have a process that we follow, but very quickly we move from the process into the practical. So one of the things that I'm very, very interested in is not always the theory, because the theory can become cumbersome, because it's then on the ground where people are in action. So how do I make that action quick and easy for people? So that's where what was really exciting for me from a contact center and customer service perspective. From there, I did that for many, many years. And then from there, that was all I moved into. I was asked to do more work in face-to-face service. Okay. And so moved into face-to-face service. But along the way, the whole entire time, I was working with the leaders. So not only with the front line, but working with the leaders so that they could then impart their knowledge in a practical way for that ripple effect of change. So that for me that for me is where the leadership style came in. After that, what I started to see was that it wasn't just the individual contributor that I was able to help, but where people and service orientation, no matter what the group was, whether it was in service or in like a service operations or in sales operations or, you know, just general operations where people are doing manufacturing or doing anything. The trick was that to make everything great, you had to have a great leadership style, but
Yes.
also fantastic team style. So if a team's not working together, then everything starts to unravel.
Yeah.
Then that became something where it was cross-functional. And one of the things that when you start from a service orientation, you realize very quickly that it's not a standalone situation. You must rely on, in service, for example, you must rely on sales and marketing and then
Yes.
back end and, you know, all of that. So it becomes a cross-functional relationship. And so from there, I started to work. I was invited to work with a lot of leaders to help them with their teams, and then subsequently, I became absolutely delighted in the discovery and the research into building successful cultures. So how do we build a successful culture in a team? How do we build a successful culture in a division? How do we build a successful culture in an organization? And so that's been my journey. That's been my journey, and it started off very much in me being an individual contributor and trying to learn what was the right thing to do in the moment as a service provider, and then as a leader, etc.
Okay. So I picked up two words from you. One is ripple effect.
Yes.
You know, yes. So that's like, you know, the power of what spreads lies in what you do, you know, in the center of what you're working on. And the second thing, which I fully subscribe to, I mean, it's something that I believe works so strongly, is what I call the conducive structure. Because it's not just about people and you can train 100 people or you can just do what you want. But if your structure is not good enough to, you know, make that happen, it all will fall flat after a point of time. How does this work now? You know, we're talking about people and we're talking partly about structure also. So how does this work in the technology environment that we are in today? Because
Yes.
everyone says,
Yeah.
everyone says that, you know, yeah, you put technology and, you know, all your problems are solved. So I'm a person who's completely for technology, because it gives you error-free operations, and, you know, there is speed. You can, you know, there's standardization. So I love technology. But what happens is when people and technology you know, have that intersection, then does this whole thing work in that?
Well, it does, because I think that technology, so technology is fantastic in that as an end user, all of a sudden I am able to get things at the, you know, click of a finger, and I want to have that. And then I become used to it. And then when I don't get it, then that's when I start to panic, or that's when I start to get upset and all of that sort of stuff. So that's one thing. But technology is fantastic, but the reason why technology is so great, it's not to get rid of people. It's to make organizations smaller. It's actually to give the opportunity to the human element to be able to work on the pieces that are the most important, and to deal with the stuff that a computer just can't deal with or shouldn't have to deal with, because we still want to have the human connection. We are intrinsically designed, and we have not grown out of it. But we are so intrinsically designed to be connected to others. We want to be a part of a tribe. We want to know that we belong somewhere. So really, I think that the most important thing about technology and the humans is to realize, firstly, is that the technology is there to give the human element more opportunity to deal with the more complex situations, the areas that people want to have more connection on. Because so many of us are so used to now looking up a map on our phones, we're not going to go to a book ever again, but it's quick, right? But it's only when the map doesn't work, do we need some more help? And so hence we want somebody to guide us and give us that information, and to be able to have that human element to guide us through, that's the magic of it. And so I think that technology and the people element is so important, that we validate both.
Yeah.
That we
Yeah, so
validate
that's
both, and both can work
it's there to
beautifully
stay. In
together.
short, I mean, it's always going to be there, and it's up to the user, the end user, of course,
Of course.
uses it, but it's also to the companies to make best use of both the worlds in a way. So you were so tell us a little more about culture.
So, there's a lot of research has gone into culture, and one of the things that has fascinated me is that people want to have a wonderful culture, but sometimes what happens is, this is one of the things that I absolutely love, is that people have the perfect intent, but not always perfect execution. And so for me, it's about helping with building a successful culture, is to highlight or to have a look at what needs to be built up, what needs to be addressed more, what needs to be looked at differently. But there are some very fundamental pieces that nearly every researcher will agree on, that must be in place, and in place well, for a culture to be successful. So, many researchers will say that there are three main elements. I'm going with four, and the four that I go with are what we call what a lot of psychologists call psychological safety, but mainly people call that trust. Do I trust the situation that I am in? Do I trust the people that I'm working with? Do I trust the organization? So trust. The next one is belonging. Without a doubt, it's belonging is one of the pieces that gets talked about the most. Diversity and inclusion around the world is one of the hottest topics, so that you can get everybody's voice. But people want to belong to a tribe. And when you work for a company, and you have special language in a company, that is part of the culture. It's almost like somebody looking in, they will go, that sounds crazy, or what does that acronym mean, or what's going on? But that's actually the culture, and that is being a part of a tribe, and that's what we're trying to build. So people want that belonging. And then the third element, which none of these are coming in order, because I think this one is quite key, but the third element is to have a really strong purpose. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and they want to know what they are. They really want to know what they are contributing to. And as leaders are elevated, they want to believe in what that person believes in. And so it's about having a very strong purpose, a very strong why statement. Why are we doing this? Why are we on this? Why are we on this planet? What are we here to achieve? So a purpose, a very strong purpose. And the fourth one, which I would suggest is actually the first one, is to build a happy culture. And now a lot of people don't love the word happy, because happy is that seems a little bit
really spread.
Yeah, very loose. Yes. But it's very interesting. It doesn't matter whether you call it fulfillment or joy, and even happiness in the moment. We know that you cannot be happy all the time, and happy is a state in the moment. It's not necessarily a destination. But Satinder, I don't know anybody that walks around and says, oh, I am so joyful today, or I am so fulfilled today. What we walk around saying is, I am happy today, or I want my children to be happy. I want a happy customer. And so I'm going with the happiness. And then again, I'm going with the happiness because, again, a lot of research in psychology has gone into what makes a happy culture, and there are steps. And this is what you are interested in. There are actually 5 steps. So that we can share that later on. But there are 5 steps to happiness, which if implemented in organizations, are proving to improve the culture of an organization when done as a collective.
So now, so there are 2 things that I've just picked up now from what you're saying. One is, again, the method. The method, even to be happy in a way, whichever word we use, in substitution of happiness. And the second thing is the importance of leadership. So can anything happen to culture if it doesn't come from the top? Now, that's one thing that, because see, what we would normally find is that the people who are driving service or service operations are not necessarily the people who take decisions for the company. I mean, they're not like maybe right there at the top. But what is the role of leadership in a good service operations?
So when it comes to culture actually, I'm a firm believer that culture starts at the top and at the bottom. So I have worked in so many organizations, hundreds of organizations now, where everybody says culture starts at the top, and it does. The leader must set the standard. And the individual contributors, they want the leader to tell them what they are working towards. They want that purpose. Yeah. And so that is very key. However, you cannot have a great team or a great company or a great division if the people from the bottom are not pushing or not agreeing with the culture from the bottom. And actually, I have seen in some cases where the culture is so strong in the team from all the individual contributors, they have changed the culture of the leader. And often we tend to see that by the leader getting ousted if it is not a positive leadership culture. Okay, so you can see that it can work.
It works. It works.
And so when I was saying before, Satinder, that I believe that culture starts at the top and at the bottom, the structure or the success culture model that I was outlining for you, that's something that I share with the leaders, right? I share that with the individual contributors as well, but just as a need to know. But what I do share with the individual contributors is that nothing can change without them having a personal methodology and a personal culture that is going to work for everybody, for them and everybody else. And we call that magic. We make, you were saying about systems and processes. What I don't like is systems and processes or methodologies that are too complex, because people then get lost.
Yes.
So what we've come up with is something called Your Magic, and the reason why we call it magic is it's a personal success culture model. And so it starts, and the thing that I like about it is, well, firstly, I don't like magic because I have no control over it. I like to control it, but I have no control over it. But the thing is what we do with this magic process is we demystify the magic, because I believe that everybody already has the magic in them to build their own personal success culture, and they just need it demystified. So would you like me to share with you what magic stands for?
Of course, yes.
So
of course.
The very first thing is mindset. If we don't have the right mindset, if we don't set in with the right mindset, then things will fail, because we will make it fail. If we believe that it won't work, it won't work. But if we believe it will work, we will make it work. So having a magic mindset, a very positive or growth mindset is essential. The next step is accountability. So having accountability for the things that you said that you would implement and that you are going to achieve. So really holding yourself to account. And there's some subsystems underneath that to do that, which are very simple, but it boils down to personal integrity. The next one is gratitude. And I'm a firm believer, and this is part of remember I was saying about the happiness and the fulfillment and joy.
Yeah.
The number one step, which has been proven time and time again, to decrease turnover, to decrease stress, all of those sorts of things that have really, really practical application, is to demonstrate gratitude. And the opposite to gratitude is entitlement. And so what we want to do is we want to up the gratitude.
Move from.
So gratitude. The next one is individual habits. We cannot be successful if we don't have a set of actions and steps that we are going to follow. So those individual habits that we follow on a consistent basis is what will make us successful personally. Because if anybody remembers the thing that nothing happened by magic, they did things consistently.
Yes.
And they have individual habits. So that's the I. And then the C, which I just think rounds it out so beautifully, is connectedness. Because without connectedness, without being able to rely on others, you cannot be successful en masse. And when we're talking about service operations, or when we're talking about providing an incredible customer experience, you can't just do that alone. It starts with you, but then the ripple effect is happening along the way, because it's somebody in service operations that's helping you as the customer operational person. It's then somebody then doing the delivery of what it is that you promised. So connectedness, and actually it starts with the connectedness of you getting there in the first place, learning, getting information from others that will help you to be successful. So that is a personal success culture methodology that I love.
So that's the magic. Yeah. Okay. So now, while we are at this, one piece is, for, there's a management who, or the leader who says, okay, look, this is the place where we want to go. Then the culture builds, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Now I'm just imagining a scenario where seems a little, supposing direct, there's leadership, there is something between, and then there's delivery to the customer. What happens to people in the teams, like, who are not really who do a lot of work? They are the backbone of any company, like say technology or say compliance. These are the teams which are rock solid behind anything that happens to a company. They are not the ones who directly, are the ones who deliver service. So how does this one connect to them? That's one question that I have. And the other one that I also have is that, how does this message of what the leader wants, or what the leader, thinks, passes on to the last person down the line? Because if we are talking about a small company, it's very easy. You call a group of 4-5 people and you tell them what you want. When talking about huge structures, when you're talking about large companies, and then there are just so many layers, what the leader says and what the last person understands could be like completely different, and I've seen it happening. Okay, so the leader says one thing, and then when you're checking it at the person who's delivering, oh no, this is not what the leader wants.
And that's where you have a cultural mismatch. I hear you. So let's go with the first question, which is how are those operate or the we sometimes we call them enabling services. So the enabling service that's going to make the front line look great or make sure that it's functioning. So let's call them enabling services. How are they brought in? Is your question, Satinder, more around how are they brought into the successful culture? Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean. How do they come into this? Because unless they are on the same plane as the everybody else, they would doing something different. And it is, I'll also tell you from where it's coming. See, we while we believe in, this connectedness and the company is one whole. The other piece of it is that we also have
Yeah.
groups which we have ring fenced for the purpose of
Yes.
specialization, because we want technology to be perfect in technology. That's their main work, and they can't be doing many things. So they will definitely have 90% or 99% of what they do would be technology alone. I mean, that's what they need to do. But if they're not a part of this larger piece, I mean, obviously there'll be breakages, or it won't work because the directions will be different or the speed will be different.
And this is where it does actually tie in very well with the question that your second question is about the leadership messaging. And this is where people talk about why culture starts at the top. Because if an executive leadership team is not aligned and they are not able to work cohesively together. So when I work with executive leadership teams, I'm working on their alignment. And what we want to see in that alignment is that they can see whatever the project is. So we want to deliver excellent customer service. Customer service is our key here, right? That's our key target today. Growth or something else might be target next week. But today, this is our key thing. If we put an operational issue into the executive leadership team and then somebody says, well, I don't do customer service, that's not my job, then you have a whole organization that stays siloed and that will not ask the right questions about how they can impact and how they can work together. So if the technology, the chief digital officer is saying, well, customer service, that's not my job, that's your job, in that executive leadership team, it's never going to work. However, if the leader here says, in customer service says, I need your help, chief digital officer, I need your help. What can we do to make this better? And marketing, what can we do to make this better for customer service? Yeah. If everybody then is talking, then that makes everything else much easier to then follow. So what then happens is that those enabling services are actually actively part of the solution, and everybody is asking the right questions. What does technology look like? What does compliance want? So everybody, there's a representation in every step of the solution. And that is how everybody then is part of that one culture. And we do want specialists, right, Satinder? We want specialists. We can't have people, wishy-washy, not knowing technology. We want them to know it, but we want them to know how they impact. And that's where service operations, I think, comes in, because they are the bridge.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, completely agree with you. Because what you're saying is right. Leadership is what questions leadership asks.
Yeah.
Because quite often each one does their own thing, and unless there is this automatic balancing is what I call. So it's like, if I'm looking at data, I would want data to come from somebody who's not a stakeholder in the data, and that's how. So I think having teams which auto balance also, because you don't need intervention all the time, should help. And it builds a culture. Actually, it's a culture in a way. That there is accountability, that there is this honesty in what they do, and various other things. Yeah, that's great. So just tell me, typical to, like, I mean, your work, is it mainly around Australia, or is it do you do work for people, others outside Australia also?
Oh, yes. I'll come back to that. I am going to answer that for you, but I just wanted to answer something, because you asked me another question. Is that all right? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You asked me another question about the layering of the information, and how do we get this information from here to down to here. And
sure, yeah.
I'm excited that you asked that question because it is a fundamental problem. So one of the things that I can tell you that when I'm working with executive leaders is I spend incredible amounts of time on their communications. And in fact, leaders must see themselves as chief repeating officers. You do not have to. You do not change the strategy, the purpose, the plan. You don't change the values. You stick to all of that, but you get creative at how you deliver it. Because actually, you're right, is we need to hear that same message over and over and over again. The issue is that the executive leader has said it 7,000 times, but this person down here has only heard it once. And it's the very repetition of the messaging so that it becomes culture, so that it becomes the thing that everybody says day in, day out. This is what we say. This is how we say it. Because it's exactly the same as on a smaller version is anytime you've got an acronym that has been repeated so often that everybody uses it. But that's not what's happening when you have a message. And the other thing from the leadership team, and the other thing that we teach, so a little thing that maybe your listeners can be mindful of is the most successful leadership teams that I have seen and had the opportunity to work with. What they do at the end of every single meeting is they come up with a short summary of what they have spoken about in that meeting, and they write it down, they craft it together before they leave their conference or their meeting, and they all write it down and they all agree that that's what they're going to tell their teams. And that's it. And it continues, the messaging continues over and over. So that is how it happens. It's not easy, but it has to be the consistency and the creativity of how it's delivered.
Yes. I like this repeat. What
is
like
a chief repeating officer, and then on the other and then on the other side, it's a chief reminding officer. So you want to keep reminding people of what they're meant to be doing. And actually, if you've got incredibly good people, who are doing their jobs well, you just have to approve what they want as a leader. You're just approving that, and then you can spend time doing all of the stuff that the people want you to do, which is give them the vision, give them the purpose, keep them going. So that's where it is. So
sorry. So I would there is this while I was working on this complaint reduction piece, and one of the one of the steps in the methodology was to understand the intent of management. So what happens is that in complaint reduction, when you're trying to reduce complaints, any manager or at any level generally gets instructions like, oh, we don't want escalations, or the cost must come down. So they get some 5-6 different, messages. And it's very difficult for any manager or leader to pass this on to the team, because what are you going to really tell the team? Are you telling them, no, we must reduce cost? They'll quickly start closing with the customer. Do you want to tell them that we want to give a good resolution? Do we want to tell them? So I think that, yes, what you're saying is that the message has to be consistent, and it also has to be simple for the teams who execute to be able to do it. So the management intent is, I think, is what I call it. Intent is it's not about the vision and mission and all those big things that companies have, but it's a simple intent of the management that the leaders down the line, if they know the mid-level leaders, or even just a team leader for that matter, if he knows the intent and if it's communicated clearly, I think that's like, it goes a long way in the entire alignment process.
And that is the cultural makeup of an organization. So if you've got an organization that says reduce costs, then you are going to have a culture where of negativity that comes from that. To understand that we must reduce costs, but not at all cost,
Yes. Yes.
It's a different
It's
it's a
different.
different culture, right? So yeah, so you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. You have to have the intent and the behavior. So what happens is, once you in a culture, you have the purpose. Why are we doing this? You have the vision. You have the values of the organization. But underneath those values, you have not really more than three or four, five behaviors that underpin those values. And if you can tie your intent to one of those behaviors that underpin the values, then you are on the way. You will be on your way
Yes.
to a successful culture and successful
Yeah.
team leader
Yeah.
and successful a leader that feels like they can make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, I remember while I just recollect, we had, in this whole, what you call it, exercise of reducing
mm,
complaints. And, then it's just not limited to complaints, because it actually moves back to the real operations, because unless you do
yeah,
things there, you are not able to do anything at the front level. And one of the
mm,
intent expressed by one of the leaders was that if you make a
yeah,
mistake, and if you realize you've made a mistake, even at an organization level, you need to go to the customer and tell before the customer comes and
yeah,
tells you. Now, this was expressed very
mm,
simply, but you will not believe the kind of impact it had, because people were then not afraid to say that they made a
perfect,
mistake.
exactly.
It's a simple thing, small thing, but it goes on. I mean, it has a ripple effect,
Yeah,
as if I
yeah,
might use the terminology you used. It has a ripple effect. So yes, leadership, intent of leadership, and how clear
yeah,
it is. And now, as you say, how often they repeat it and how often they
good.
remind, and of course how easy they make it for
Yes,
implementation.
and Satinder, there are some really easy ways of getting across some of these things. I mean, very practical sentences, very practical little behaviors that are so easy for us to share. But as a like I keep coming back to sort of lifting it up a little bit to begin with, because one of the reasons why I love working in businesses is because of that practical nature. We
Mm.
can get in quickly and make some little changes for a big impact. But
Yes,
the
yes.
piece that I like is when leaders start with the intent of, if we get a complaint, if we do get a complaint, it's actually a gift. This is a gift.
Yeah, it's
It's a
okay.
gift to us,
And
right? And when we get a gift, the first thing we want those service people to say is thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, because it's a gift. When you get a gift, you say
yeah.
thank you. The same thing internally, the organization is saying, let us know if you have made a mistake. That's a gift to us, because then we don't have to fix
Yeah,
a bigger problem later.
that's
So
true. That's
if
true.
everybody has the intent of positivity and goodness and this gift, then it starts as a good platform for the success. And
Yes.
I think that's where that the mindset has got to be right. That's where the magic starts, the right positive mindset. That nobody comes to work to sabatage something, right? Unless they're a
Yeah.
psychopath, right?
Yes.
I'm sure
Yes,
they're out
yes,
there, but I
yes.
haven't worked with them. But I don't believe anybody comes with the intention of doing something bad.
Yeah,
So let's believe
of
that.
course.
Let's believe in that. So yeah. The other thing that you mentioned,
Yes, yes,
Satinder,
yes.
was you were saying that do I work with companies around the world?
Yeah.
I do now, and the way I do it is, and because I mean, it's just even being magnified by the situation in the world right now, where we're not doing much
Yeah,
travel.
yeah.
Certainly not out
Yes.
of Australia. We're not doing any travel. But everything is online now, and I have I have to say I have the privilege now to work with executive leaders.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, my purpose of asking you this
Mm,
question was that, do you see any huge cultural
mm,
differences, okay, among the people, which there are, of course, every place, every company has a different culture. But when you, do this execution, or when you're putting this method to how people should do things, do you do it differently? That was my question.
So I do get to work with people around the world. The reason why it is not, the reason why the work that I get to do is every single person is different. So it doesn't matter which culture they come from. We must start with an understanding of what is important to them. So it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So you must always do a review of some nature to understand that person's history, background, their intent, their leadership legacy, the legacy that they want to leave. And then from there, we build a cultural platform that aligns to that based on the principles that we know are relatively universal. Universal.
Yeah.
So that's
what I might say is the framework remains the same. Yeah, it's a bit of customization which people actually would do for implementing it, which I think everybody would need to do in any case. Every person will need to do in any case. Yeah. So it's so there's a lot of learning so far in the discussion that we've had. Would you like to at this point summarize it a bit?
Yeah, so I guess the key things for me is that when we're building a successful culture, I believe it starts with self. We have to start with our own magic. So it doesn't matter whether I'm the CEO or the vice president or the president of an organization. It must start with me. So that's where my magic starts. If I so the mindset, the accountability, gratitude, individual habits, and connectedness. That then, when we're then looking at a team or an organizational culture, we must overlay that with a cultural pathway that people can follow or to feel a part of, and that will give us the results. It does. It's been proven time and time again to give us the results. So that's through the success culture model. And then the other thing that we spoke about is that we must be repetitive. We must keep reminding people of the same thing. If we keep chopping and changing, it becomes too difficult. Yeah. But and that all links to the fact that we must keep asking questions of each other so that we can feel included. What are your thoughts? We have consistency of that messaging, and then it works in that we have a process. So every single thing that we do actually has a process. It just doesn't have to be so orchestrated for everything. And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated is probably more what I mean, but it just has to be simple. So I'm working very closely with a number of different organizations at the moment. And I've been engaged not only to do culture and to do executive leadership coaching and team coaching, but also to do change management. And to help with changes that will then that will help impact a cultural change, right? I've been working with a number of organizations, and one of the things that has come across that I keep seeing over and over, and it was baffling me as to what was the disconnect, and I've been really digging deep, and I think that I've landed on it. Actually, I'm starting to understand where there is a disconnect, and previously we were speaking about leaders, people, and we're all leaders, right? So even if we're just leading a situation, whether we're managing people or not is a different thing. But one of the things I have found is that the hugest disconnect is when people don't tell each other why something is happening. And this is very interesting because some companies have come to me and said, oh, we're not very good at change here, or change is difficult for us. Change is not difficult. People want change. They crave change. They're interested in change. What they don't like is the
Yeah.
transition. They don't like what happens in
Yes.
between
Oh,
because it's
yeah.
hard. It
It's
takes
hard.
us backward. It's a lot more work. I feel tired.
Lot of
Right?
work. Yeah. It's a lot of work, actually, very
Yeah,
simply.
right. And my energy is depleted. All of that sort of stuff, and that has impacts, right? But the change is exciting. Yes, I want the change. But
Yeah.
sometimes changes are made and you have no idea that that's going to happen to
Why?
you. But what we've found is throughout businesses, people are not explaining the why. And when you look at a change process, one of the first thing in a change process is to tell the people why it's happening. And as practically as telling people why you are changing a meeting is, it's equally
Yes.
as important to say, I'm going to be cancelling this meeting, this is why, but I want you to feel like you are still special to me, you are still important to me, and I'll
Yeah.
come back to it. But the disconnect in organizations and cultures, and where people feel a distrust with each other, is that they don't have the transparency around the why. And if I was to
Yeah.
now do, and as I'm working with different customers and moving on, if I was to really focus on a huge cultural impact that could be done in a very easy, small way, I would be suggesting to most people to describe why something is happening as the first and foremost
Yeah.
thing, and then you'll have a positive culture. People may not like it,
Yes.
but to understand
Yeah.
why is a better pill to swallow, and then I'm able then to move forward on the change. And in service operations, especially when you come with so much technology, if there isn't
Yeah.
the ability to communicate why this technology is going to be better or this is happening differently, then you have then you'll have the disconnect. Otherwise, it will
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
It's also got to do with what's in it for me.
Yeah,
Because I have seen this happening, and quite often, of course, in our early days, because of, or even it even
yeah.
happens today, it's like, so and so said, so we should do it. That's the worst thing that
Mm.
anybody down the line wants to do, because especially, I think this is a very typical thing of wanting people to collect more data from the
Mm.
customer. So first, if you had just 5 points of
Yeah.
information, now you want them to get 10 points. Why? Because you want to do some more work, and it helps in a better resolution,
Mm.
so to say. But what really happens is, we don't tell them that. We just tell them add 5 columns, and can you imagine the kind of burden that person has in adding 5 columns, filling it up again, just because somebody wants it. We don't really tell them why, actually, the why and how it will help
Yes.
them. I
And when we're talking about what it takes to build great leadership in an organization, is
Yeah.
actually spending time crafting the why, crafting the purpose for the change, crafting the picture, the vision. What's the end result of that? What's in it for me? So what's in it for me? What's in it for them? What's in it for them? So crafting the picture,
Yeah.
giving them the plan, how you have how
How
it's
it's
going to
going to
happen,
happen.
and
Yes.
then what part they play in it, and what part I play in it, and what part that person will play in it, and that person. So what I have just said to you is something called the 4 Ps of change communication. So it's purpose, picture, plan, and part, and that's by a guy called Bill Bridges, as part of his modeling for change. It's brilliant, it's easy, and so easy to implement. But if I was to say, do one thing to build a successful team, a successful culture, successful cross functional team building, is keep telling people
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
and that's where the success
Yeah.
comes. And and on the flip side, when I'm working with individual contributors, I teach them
Hmm.
to ask why politely, but to ask
Yeah.
why politely, because
Okay.
if you say why, it means,
Why?
so we do have to teach them
Yes.
how to ask it politely.
Yeah. So I think I'll need to have another session with you on, the tricks of how to
Oh yeah,
communicate.
well,
Yeah. Yeah, because there is a method, and I've also seen, I when all said and done, see, there's so much going on in
Mm,
everybody's mind, especially if any leader for that matter, and they want to say so many things, and getting it out very clearly. If there is a methodology to it, which
yeah.
there is, it would it's very useful, and when you can do things in a simple way, why go that roundabout way? Gabby, I mean, it's been really a pleasure to interact with you. Of course, we do it often, but in
This
this
is
manner.
new.
And your experience is so vast and so deep. That's everything is based on some study that you have done, and your experience with so many
Mm.
companies. I think it is going to be very valuable for all our listeners. And of course, I learned a lot too. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's absolutely been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. And, I just want everybody to remember that they already have the magic in them.
Yes, yes, yes. We are all
Very
magical.
magical.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank
thanks,
you.
thank you.